Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. In 1900, most Americans lived on a farm or near farms in rural communities. Their livelihood was based on the production of farm crops like wheat, soybeans, and corn, and farm animals which produced milk, beef, eggs, chicken, and ham. In 2001, between 5 and 10% of the population was involved in agriculture. Yet, this small cadre of Americans provides the vast quantities of food required to sustain the other 90% of the population. Federal and state farm programs are designed to steady commodity prices and farm income. But, as we've seen in recent years, food production and therefore the cost of food can be influenced by conditions outside the control of government and those in the farm community. In 2012, the drought had a startling effect on the cost of beef. Bird flu has caused an enormous increase in the cost of eggs. Our guest today, Darren Bailey, is a farmer. He and his family have been farming in southern Illinois for decades. He's here today to tell us what it takes to create American food and what is being done to ensure farmers continue that process. Darren Bailey, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here.
We're really glad to have you. I got the idea because I'd heard some stuff about farming and and I've been watching at the grocery store the cost of food, even though there's no inflation, they say.
Absolutely.
And yet when you look at simple things like cantaloupe, I remember it used to be 4 for $1. Now you're lucky if you can get 1 for $3. And the cost of even simple things like Wheaties or Cheerios has gone up exponentially. Beef, that was startling. First time I had to pay like $7, $8 a pound for hamburger. So I had the idea that, maybe we ought to talk about guys like you who are actually providing the food that we all need to eat. So first, let's do a little background. You and your family have been farming how long?
Since about, my father started a farm in 1960, and I kind of came online around 1980 and began venturing out farming. So I've been involved with it all my life.
And you have sons too
I have two. Yes, I have several children. 3 of my sons are actively involved in the farm, one of them still being in high school. So.
Mm-hmm. And so you said your father started, not your grandfather was not involved in that?
No, my father started from scratch and was married in 1962, so, or 1964, I'm sorry.
Well, back in those days, I'm only saying this from my reading, it seemed that the government was much more supportive of farmers than they had been, say, before World War II.
Yes.
Is that your reading of the situation?
Yes, and the form of support that I believe has been kind of kicked up over the last 20 years has been through farm subsidies, and it's kind of congested and confused America, I think, because of more government involvement, and it creates a little bit of a problem, mainly with communication with the American people, I believe. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, so farmers do a great job. I mean, you produce enough food to really feed the entire population of the United States. Like I said, there's 5 to 10% of farmers, and you're feeding yourselves and the other 95%. Plus, we have considerable amount of food which exits the United States and goes to other countries as well.
Yes.
Are you involved in selling food outside the United States?
No, I think a lot of the food that I produce is marketed through exports by the government. So I'm kind of I don't have any with corn, beans, and soybeans and wheat. I don't have, the only access I have is the river terminal markets that then are exported to other companies.
And
countries.
those are the items that you produce.
Yes. Yep.
You have row crops.
Row crops, yes.
Right. And so when you, I guess let's just start from the beginning. Right now, just so people know, we're taping this. It's like the middle of January 2016. Okay. So at some point in the not too distant future, you're going to start working on your fields, right?
Yes.
What's that like? Just describe, when do you make the decision to start working the fields, and what exactly do you have to do?
Yep, that's awesome. Thank you. And I invite anyone, all of our landlords and any landlords being people that I rent ground from, to come and visit us anytime and see what we do, because we work all year round. Right now, we are hauling grain to the elevator. We're cleaning out grain bins. We are working in the shop. We bring our equipment in, tear it down, and replace bearings and replace worn parts. I mean, it really never ends, and you really never get caught up.
So you're an independent businessman, is how you
absolutely.
see yourself.
Yeah, oh yes, absolutely. So.
And when you say that you're taking stuff to the elevator, explain to
Yes.
non-farmers what that means?
Well, some farmers haul their grain to the elevator during harvest. We are blessed enough to have on-farm storage.
What is an elevator?
That's the like an ADM or where the bins are at along the business place that actually buys the grain.
So it's like a storage facility
yes,
for the product that you produced.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And they are the ones in with that have the channels that when grain is sold and to other countries, that it is moved through them down. You go to St. Louis and look across from the arch, and you see all these grain bin facilities.
Mm-hmm.
Those are that's a farming term, I guess. We call those elevators,
Mm-hmm.
and lots of several different companies that market those. So I work through them and through grain brokers and find out who wants my grain the most and sell to them. So then after harvest, once I price the product, then I begin to deliver. So
that's what I was going to ask you. So the elevator, actually, you don't own that. You're not like renting space there.
No,
You've
that is
actually
correct.
sold it to them
Yes.
at a particular price. Now,
Yes.
this price, was that set at after the product was produced, or is this set like right now you're saying, okay, I will deliver to you at a certain price, a certain amount of wheat? Is that
all the above, and that is the dilemma of the American farmer, because in 2012, after the drought, we were looking at record high prices of recent time. We were looking at $15, $16 soybeans. And
if you had beans left?
Thank you very much. That's exactly right.
Okay.
And on our farm, we had nothing. We were completely devastated, and as a matter of fact, I had grain sold for that year. So once those prices rose, then I had to buy myself out of those contracts, which cost, I had to pay the difference from the $4 and $5 corn, $3 and $4 corn that I had sold, and now all of a sudden corn was at $5 and $6. So marketing has become a very important player with the American farmer, to get educated, to trust individuals that we sell for. I can sell grain 3 years in advance. Mm-hmm. So
let's make sure people understand what you just said there, so that they understand this business of farming, because it's a business. You have the ability to say to the elevator, to the storage, and eventually, I guess, the people who make it into Cheerios or whatever. Yep. You say to them, okay, I'm a farmer. I can guarantee you X number of bushels of wheat, and you pay me X number of dollars and cents per bushel, and we have a contract.
Yes.
Right. But what you said was that if you couldn't produce this wheat or these beans, you're still on the hook. You still owe them X number, or however many you sold.
Yep.
Because they're expecting that much, because they have commodity people that need to own that stuff and use it and process it into food. So you just said, I got to go buy it from people who still had some?
Well, or I buy my contract back from them, which I simply have to pay the difference. I give them the difference of what our agreed price was, which now mine is lower than where the price is now, and then they go elsewhere and look for it, because we have a binding contract that I'm to deliver that grain. So yes, I have the choice of coming up with the grain or buying myself out of that contract.
But nevertheless, if you were planning on selling at $3 and it turns into $5, then you're $2 a bushel negative, which you have to take out of your pocket.
Yes, if that happens. Now, so I think farmers have learned a lot since 2012, and we plan ahead. I particularly try to plan ahead for 2 years, and I try to figure out where my break-even cost is. I try to discover what and you look in any farm magazine right now, and you go to any farm meeting, and that's what they're trying to instill in the American farmer's head is get your pencil out, sharpen it, and figure out what it is costing you to produce and to live. And if you have the opportunity to price your grain at a price that you're satisfied with, and if you can keep the greed factor out, then and that's what I've really been working hard to do is to, I figure that out. I know where that's at. And when that price gets to that point, then I feel comfortable. I'll pull the trigger on 10%, 20%, 50%. And such. So, but yes, we winding up with a year where we didn't produce anything, it changed a lot of mentality. So,
now there is something called crop insurance.
Yes.
Describe that and what value that is or not value.
Okay, crop insurance. At this point in time, it is almost impossible to get a loan from most farmers, especially if you started off by yourself and there's not a long legacy of the family that's been farming. You rely on the bank to borrow your money and put your crop out. I don't know.
Meaning that you borrow in order to buy your seed, to buy your chemicals, to buy, and then at the end of the year when you sell, then you pay your loans.
Yes, that is correct. Yep. So right now, today, in the last 10 years, it has become impossible to go to the bank. A bank will not loan money to anyone, to my knowledge, unless you have crop insurance. Crop insurance is subsidized by the federal government, which is part of the ag program. And that's the neat thing when we look at the agricultural program in America and understand that it entails all the forest, the woodlands, practically everything that involves green growth in America, or even our fish and such, then you start to realize that the agriculture is in the 1 to 2% of the total budget.
This is the Conservation Reserve Program you're referring to?
Well, that's another entity.
Okay.
That's set aside ground. So set aside crop insurance subsidies, farm subsidy payments. It's a pretty vast setup, and when you look at the numbers, it's large. But when you compare that, that's what I encourage a lot of people to do is to compare that to the actual USDA, the agricultural budget, and you'll see that it is food stamps are in the USDA budget. You figure out that it is
it's one of the largest segments of the U.S. budget.
But the actual farm for agriculture, it is not in any way, shape, or form geared up to help farmers become rich. It is simply these years that get tough and tight. Whenever I find myself that I might be in a negative position, sometimes there are safeguards there to help me get to the next year and hope and look for a better year. So,
do you know people who went out of business as a result of 2012?
Yeah, yes I do, and unfortunately that lack of education or the greed factor when those prices were high and farmers did not sell their grain ahead of time and there are people with grain still in the grain bins now from last year, from the year before, and if you find yourself in that situation and you've got to create some cash and sell your grain, hopefully we work and develop relationships with our bankers, and there's a trust factor taking place. So banks sometimes will, like any other business, they'll work with you if you're trying. So the problem is when the farmer has to sell his grain and all of a sudden finds himself that I don't have enough, I'm way behind, I don't have enough grain, because the prices have fallen drastically since 2012 because we've been blessed and we've grown some awesome crops. So,
is the state's financial condition having any impact on farmers? The Illinois state I'm talking about.
It really doesn't. No, it really doesn't. Probably if it has any impact from time to time, there's more some regulations, EPA, OSHA, that maybe seems like maybe they seem to go looking for business revenue for the state, which is frustrating. But rules are rules, and we try to. Obviously everybody needs to abide by rules, but sometimes some of these regulations that are put in place are very costly. They just add to our cost, and not being in the retail sector, I can't determine what my product's price needs to be based on my cost. So that all kind of comes back sometimes, and goes back to the management detail of the particular farmer. So.
Of course, in some respects, you're not just competing with other farmers in Illinois or farmers across the United States. You're competing with farmers who are in other countries, like in China or in Australia, right?
That's right. Wheat has become a difficult crop to grow because every 2 months there is a wheat crop coming off of the farm in a particular part of the world.
South America too,
South Australia, that is exactly right. So Russia, and it used to be it was us and Canada producing wheat, and you'd have spring wheat, you'd have winter wheat, but now, like I said, it's coming across constantly, and everyone is getting better at growing a good crop. So it does make it concerning sometimes.
Yeah, well, I guess just like oil now, where you have a glut of oil on the market depresses the price of per barrel of oil. So I mean, used to be 106 a barrel, now it's down below 30 a barrel because there's so much. Are you finding the same thing is true of wheat when you say that there are so many more countries in that business?
Yeah, and corn and everything, literally. And it's feast or famine. And in the good years, you've got to be able to manage your inputs wisely, and you've got to be. We sit down and decide to where to put our money and to conserve as much as possible. That's what it's that's what it's turned into, which is a good thing because it makes us smarter managers. But it also narrows the playing field each year, and I hate to see that because agricultural farmers raising families on the farm has always seemed to me to be the backbone of America, and that pool is getting smaller and smaller every year. So.
Now, when your dad started farming, there was no such thing as GMO.
That is correct.
That all of a sudden, I just say that, all of a sudden there's people who are falling down because, oh my goodness, it's like, it's terrible. But you're talking about genetically modified, and one of the main creators of genetically modified seeds is the Monsanto company, right?
Yes.
Now, are you using genetically modified seeds?
Yes.
And why do you use genetically modified seeds?
I don't believe that I would be in business if I was not using genetically modified seeds because of the cost that it costs to spray the chemical to cultivate. I don't know. The weed pressures seem to be so much more today. We stopped plowing when I was in high school. The government had a T by 2000, no more deep tillage, and they wanted to eradicate erosion by the year 2000. Well, moldboard plowing was causing a lot of erosion. So I've never been on a plow when you hear about people talking about plowing ground.
Pause there. Now, when we look at the old movies of farmers, they got that ox and they got that thing in the ground, and they're just, they're pulling through and then they plant the seed. That doesn't happen. And I don't mean the ox, but I mean, we've also seen tractors that would dig into the ground. You're saying that doesn't happen anymore?
Not as much. If it does, it's on a much more managed situation. There's a lot of no-till where you don't till, you don't farm.
So how do you get your seed in the ground?
Well, we manage that, but we disc. We don't. The moldboard plow would bring the ground up from about a foot or so, let's say, and just totally flip the ground upside down.
Right.
Which so our concern with not doing that today. Today we till the soil probably when we turn the soil, it's only done at probably a 4-inch level. So therefore, that has allowed more weed pressure to come about, resulting in the use of more chemicals, because the old days of going out and cultivating your fields, we just simply, it cost a lot for the people who are growing non-GMO crops, for the most part, are spending more on chemical. Now they are receiving a premium at the elevator for for the fact that it is non-GMO, but it's difficult to do. We've had more and more, just like diseases in the world. Each year it seems like there's a new disease that comes around in corn, and with all the insects, the bugs, the GMOs help prevent the damage that insects can do to our crops.
So you're saying that the seeds that Monsanto designed, they help to let the crop develop even though there's weeds around?
No, they allow you to. You can spray these stronger chemicals.
Stronger chemicals that kill the weeds.
And when I say stronger, I simply mean that chemicals
more effective.
Yeah, see, a lot of time our rates are ounces per acre, literally, and a lot of people don't understand. You know, an acre of ground is 43,560 square feet. Roundup, for instance, is, you know, a heavier rate is 32 ounces an acre. That 32 ounces of actual chemical is being dispersed by 10 to 15 gallons of water over 43,560 feet. So that chemistry helps kill that weed that was before harder to kill or impossible to kill.
And you're saying also that this genetically modified seed also helps the plant not to be attacked by various bugs.
Correct.
By various viruses that are out
diseases
there loose.
Diseases, viruses, and insects. Yes.
Is that a real problem? I mean, have you lost a lot of crops to disease?
It's a twofold. It's a interesting concept, because yes, our yields have gone up substantially because now we can grow and be more efficient, grow it better. So that's kind of part of that. When you have these good years with drought resistance, they're figuring out ways to.
So they need less water
to have less water. Yes. So.
2012 would have helped.
Yes. Well, and that was part of the problem, because the farming community had it in our mindset, because we had seen some drought resistance in the years before, but we thought, we'll always grow, say, 80 bushel corn or 30 bushel beans. But 2012 came across with a lot of zeros, so that was kind of interesting. So,
what's Farm Bureau?
Farm Bureau is a national, state, and local organization that basically speaks the voice of the American farmer, much like probably NRA does. Everybody knows what that is. So the Farm Bureau has the interests of the American farmer at heart, and then they go out and you know, as much as they work on a national and state level, they also work in a community level. We have a very good young farmers group in our area, which my sons are part of, and younger farmers get together and they plan events. They get the word out. You know, when farming season starts, then there's signs erected throughout the community that warn people that, hey, slow down. The SMV, the orange triangle, keep an eye on it, because everybody's in much more of a hurry anymore. So just remember to slow down. They're getting
because your gear goes slow.
Yeah, that's right.
Goes very slow.
Yes, it goes a little faster than it used to. But and then also there's a program that's awesome that's called Ag in the Classrooms, and they're going to the local schools and getting the message across to young people. Much as we were having the conversation earlier. A lot of older people, my age and older, remember being on, you know, Granddad's farm years ago. The students that we have growing up in our schools now have absolutely no idea. All they know about farming is that when they're in a hurry going to a ball game, the grocery store, or the restaurant, that there might be a vehicle ahead of them that is slowing them down, and that frustrates them. So Farm Bureau helps get the voice out to remind America of what the value of agriculture is.
So it also sounds like it's a lobbying organization,
it's a lobbying organization
with the government,
yep.
probably the state of Illinois, and in the U.S. Congress
Very much so,
as
yes.
well.
Yep.
And helps to educate even farmers like you, too.
Yes.
To bring you up to date on what the current regulations are and what new things Congress has passed to help you.
Well, that is a very good question. Mainly new things that Congress, really nothing, because most of the things that seem to be done, and it's kind of sad, is there's a rule, and I can't, my mind slips, there's with the EPA on water drainage that is kind of somewhat devastating. The EPA used to consider a navigable waterway as any place that you could take a boat down. They changed the ruling on that last year to state that any place that water sets for, I don't know what, a 48-hour period or such a time so that is mud puddles, that's small ditches that collect water, and that's going to affect the way that the way that we spray, and that's going to cost more money because we have to implement more. So the American Farm Bureau is currently trying to make that make sense. And as I spoke with you earlier, the American farmer, the ground is the farm ground to us. I mean, that is America. That is what is feeding the rest of the world. For instance, without non-GMOs, what would a portion of the world starve to death for lack of food? And so we are very much, my family and I, and we conserve. We want to, we watch our drainage. If there's a concern of fertilizers or chemicals being washed, that's money to us going down the drain. We do not want that to happen. So I do believe, I feel confident in the American farmer and what he's doing to stop soil erosion, protect the fact that our fertilizer stays on our ground, and be very cautious of where our spray goes when we're spraying. So,
well, where do you think that the critics in American society who are critical of farm practices get the ideas that they do, that somehow you're a bunch of hicks that don't know what you're doing, and they're there to help you?
Well, sometimes there's both financially and all the way around, when there's a mistake made anymore, it's usually big. So if an anhydrous tank is a tipped over, anhydrous is that gas that we put on. It's the most efficient use of fertilizer. If something happens to it, then you see a big white, if it tips over in a ditch or then the valve breaks, a big white plume of gas goes into the atmosphere. So, there's legitimate concern about that. More so than anything, just getting that message across to people and communicating that we do care. There's just in my opinion, it's just a lack of understanding. We're looking at they look at farm equipment anymore. They look at I literally, my truck is my office. So therefore, I need to drive a decent truck, and every 250,000 miles I trade my truck. But it's a big new truck, and the equipment is big shiny green, big
That's
shiny.
what I was going to say, and we're down to the last
Okay.
30 seconds here. Explain in 30 seconds, what is the cost of your equipment?
I was telling what the cost of my equipment is sky high.
How
Combine
many-
cost, a combine with a head and a corn head and a bean head, it can be $500,000 to $600,000.
And how many of those do you need?
My particular farm, I have 3 of those.
3. So
Right.
you're talking $1.5 million, maybe $2
Just
million.
in 3 combines that I
just in
use
that.
for a couple months of the year. Yes, and
Right.
I don't pay cash for that. I go to the bank, borrow the money, and then do just what we've been talking about, plan and cross my fingers and pray that God provides.
Thanks so much. That's a fast 30 minutes. I appreciate your being here today.
Thank you very much.
I've been speaking with my guest today is Darren Bailey. He's a Southern Illinois farmer. As you heard, his family has been in the farming business since about 1960. They're out there feeding you and feeding the world, and they deserve our support. Thank you very much. If you missed this, go to YouTube and you can see the rest. Show it to your friends. Thanks. Goodbye.